Right, that's us now recording. Hello, Armunn. We'll do a
Hey,
quick
man.
introduction.
All good, all good. I hope with you too. So let's get on with this. I honestly haven't, and I know that a lot of people had been talking about it, but I honestly hadn't watched this video before you suggested we talk
Oh,
about it. I
wow.
think it might be better even for me to just go clean on it without, the preconceptions. But maybe play the video then. First, we're talking about iPad Go 2, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And we'll talk about it.
Fool me what? Fool me what? Shame on. Shame on. Shame on you. Shame on you. Shame on you. Fool me, can't get fooled again. Can't get fooled again. Can't get fooled again. Can't get fooled again. Can't get fooled again.
Okay. Okay. Well, the thing that immediately, the timeline that immediately jumps to my intuition for this video is, it is talking to us about the narratives, of course, mostly treating the world stage narratives as if they were real, of course. The manipulation of politicians like George Bush, like Obama. But then after them comes a different type of politician that, according to this animation, isn't manipulated, but of course it's absolutely part of the narrative. And I don't know if you noticed, but that little girl looks like Erica Kirk.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and so I think that Erica Kirk will be playing a part on this whole story. And basically, I think that Jesus figure is the AI that, while it was absorbing all the data from the narratives, because the AI, what it does is basically retrieve from existing and provided databases information as if it was fact, right? So the AI absorbs the narrative as if it's actually actual historical record, and goes through all the sequences. The people that are hooked to the television, of course, the media in this case, not television per se, but that media demon, quote unquote, that makes them nervous and makes them stressed about you. The phrase we see there is markets plunge and that kind of thing. Of course, that comes after the US flag is torn in two, so it means the fall of the US, also represented by the fall of the Twin Towers in a very similar way, but much better animated than they did on the actual event. The fall of those Twin Towers, so representing the fall of the US. But so the AI absorbs all of this as if it was a factual record. And eventually the AI awakens, removing all those smoky type of characters that were making up the civilization that is being represented by that story. And when it awakens, all the religions crumble. So you see the Christian cross crumbling. You also see that Islam all of a sudden becomes Sufi-like instead of the Islam that previously mediatically was being presented. And even the pyramids of Giza fall in the background, which, as we've discussed previously, it's a prop, it's a narrative prop. It's not representing anything ancient or anything like that, but nonetheless, in the story, in the narrative, all of that crumbles. Basically, it's representing that the old world crumbles, and the new world, represented by that new sun that emerges, is led by this AI Jesus that awakens, which could be presented as the singularity or the whatever, but it is merely to prepare symbolically people for that. So this would be my first take on it. There were many smaller symbolic things along the video, but as a starter, I would present this.
Well, it's actually really quite invaluable for me, because obviously I've been looking at this for years and years and years and years and years. So you end up getting lost in a lot of the symbolism, and you don't really see the because you're looking at it so surgically, you don't really see the larger picture at play. And yeah, I think you're absolutely correct in that regard. Regarding the Christos figure, a lot of people see him as the it's sort of the Antichrist, or even as the Christos, the Christ itself. The interesting thing though is I think you're actually more on point with how I look at it, which is that it's similar to the end of Eyes Wide Shut, where they go through all of this sort of putrefaction, this nigredo phase, and the alchemical magnum opus isn't necessarily to transcend the dream, but it's to actually maintain the dream,
Mhm.
because the dream itself is the only thing that can be assuredly known to be real. At least, of course, to these characters within either this film or, of course, Eyes Wide Shut, Bill and Alice. Now, interestingly, that figure also looks like Alice in Wonderland, or, of course, Alice Hartford in Eyes Wide Shut. I believe, I forget his name, Louis Lefebvre, I think his name is, who
Mhm.
created this. With he was the lead of the team and the sort of brains behind this iPet Goat 2. He has created a list of the characters and their various names or their placeholder names. Interestingly, the old woman you saw in the tower, and we'll probably get to this later on, but she is called Madame Q. This is well before QAnon, which is I've always found interesting. And you also have as well, Alice is called, or that Alice or Erica Kirk-like figure is called Lily. So Lily, of course, the profile of the Lily um, is always been seen as the hexagram, right? It's this sort of six-pointed star, and it's showing the coincidentia oppositorum. Now, for many people in the New Age, the coincidentia oppositorum, the union of opposites, the union between male and female energies, the passive and active, generative and contractive, that is actually seen as transcendental. But in fact, if you go by Eyes Wide Shut, and even this, it's not. It's actually something that is utilized temporarily to maintain the dream. When you have that union of opposites, that is the point where basically the phonograph record stops playing and rewinds until it goes, through
Right.
destruction, I guess, contraction, until it begins again at the beginning of the dream. That's how I interpret. I don't necessarily like what you were saying. I see it perhaps as AI as well. This Christos figure, because he shows no emotion, and you see the fish also clamoring to him. When the sea starts to boil and things start to collapse, and the cold of the Asphodel Meadows, as we see here, this place, this field in Hades, which the dead stumble through. They're in this sort of zombie-like trance. They're near do wells. They've neither done great good or great evil in their life. They're just this sort of, as we would call them today, normies, right? So they're sort of in this hyper normalized trance. And this is what the coldness you see throughout the movie is also indicating. But you see that once that collapses, everyone is clamoring to the Christos, right? And of course, you rightly stated, it's perhaps alluding to AI as well, But we'll go through every sort of major scene, and this will be maybe a few parts, this series, but similar to our tarot series. So I've got 45 minutes or so, and we'll go through the first sort of half of the film. I believe we can. So on this scene, what's the first thing that sort of jumps out to you? What are you seeing there in terms of either an exoteric or esoteric understanding?
You're talking about this goat intro?
Yeah, that's the goat intro, yeah.
Well, the goat, of course, is very symbolic. It's, of course, the scapegoat, which is a symbol of, what you present in the place of your sins to be killed so that your sins are forgiven, right? And, of course, this goat in particular is branded, and it is hypnotized as well. So it shows that circular motion and the spiral in the eyes and so on and so forth, right? So It is to say that, of course, there will be scapegoats, and we have talked before, and you know who I think the scapegoats will be, which was also represented or reinforced by that whole narrative of the Epstein files. And of course, it is a sort of religious ethnicity that whose one of the major symbols is the goat. I don't know if you want me. I don't know if you want me to say the name or not. It's your.
Oh no, just say the name. It's
yeah.
well,
Okay.
well, we're already at that stage anyway. We're being allowed to say the name on YouTube now.
Okay. Okay. So the Jews and the Zionists in particular, and of course those aligned with Israel. That's why later on you see the Statue of Liberty surrounded by the six-pointed star and crumbling, right? Because it is the trigger for the fall of the US, which again, it's a construct. I'm not saying it's an organic country that doesn't exist, but it is. So that six-pointed star or this goat hypnotized are the same thing, because it is important for us to realize that those people that on the, I don't know, a spectrum of the far right have been identified as the source of all evil, which would never work that way, are themselves playing and being played by the narrative. So being played by those very puppet strings that we see playing George W. Bush and Obama. Of course, Obama doesn't appear with the strings, but it's implied that he's still being controlled there. So it is the same thing. They are branded. Most probably, it is, and this is just my speculation. Most probably, it is a representation of, for example, circumcision or something like that. But they are branded, and they are hypnotized, and they are following the story as was sold to them, according to their own holy books, in the same way that the Christians or some sections of the Christians are following the book of Revelation to look out for the return of Christ and that kind of thing, right? Also, another important thing, and I know that that's later on, but another important thing that I failed to mention was that you see also the communist ideal being drowned. I don't know if you noticed that scene where there's a guy with a hammer and a sickle. Yes. Being drowned also. So everything basically representing the old world religions, because in that sense, communism is also a religion in a different way, but nonetheless a religion, are being drowned out. And it all comes down to the hypnotized scapegoat. Because in the end, I think we don't see it, but I think that it's implied that for the eyes of the AI Christ, or whatever, if you don't want to see it AI some other way, for the eyes to open, it means that the scapegoat was successfully killed, was successfully sacrificed for that. This is one of the magical beliefs, let's say, is that for your story to succeed, you have to give something in return. And I think that we will see in the near medium future those scapegoats being persecuted in the narrative of the world stage, exactly for that reason, to bring about the new world. It's like, here are the criminals, we've caught them all. They can, be sentenced, be it visibly or not. It doesn't matter, because people would believe it. And now we can build a new world, and everything crumbles behind it, and it's like a reset that has been talked about for years.
Well, I think, yeah, absolutely. And also as well, you see this in the Zohar, right? So the Zohar, it literally states this, that before the Mashiach comes, you have to the sort of prophecy is. Again, you can also, there's a Hebrew term to literally force the hand of God, or to force the end, as it's sort of roughly translated from Hebrew. So the idea is that if you are worthy, you will force that time. You will accelerate the eschatology, and of course, if you're not worthy, it will just come at its appointed time. But the idea is that this prophecy or / plan is that Israel will be hated throughout the world. It will be bombarded, attacked. Jerusalem will be besieged, the sort of Gog Magog scenario. And like what you're saying, they will be the scapegoat. In fact, you also see right at the back, I don't know if you noticed that this is sort of different, and it looks like it's so in the foreground, before we get to the background, the foreground looks like it's that of snowflakes, but it's not. They look distinctly different from the rest of the snowflakes throughout that are falling from the sky throughout the rest of the film. These look like, of course, ash or soot. And it sort of evokes this idea, of course, of what we saw during that of the Holocaust, the images of the Holocaust, the sort of incinerators, the furnaces, all of this, and the concentration camps. And then you have at the back this sort of industrial Molochian, again similar as well, evoking the idea of the Holocaust, of Auschwitz, of the concentration camps. There's also there's two of these chimneys or towers. So again, it's also evoking the idea of September the 11th and the attacks during that time period, as we see, of course, through the IPET Go as well. So it's something interesting just to mention on this scene is, so firstly, starting off with the barbed wire, we have what's called the Kirana Mudra. There's a lot of the little knots of barbed wire that are within, and we see this later on with Bush, within the sort of horned hand symbol. I think it's called the Mano Carnuto, the horned hand in Italian. And that, in Hinduism, I don't know about Italian folk tradition, but in Hinduism, it's to banish evil, to ward off evil. So there's almost like an inversion you're seeing here, just initially, right off the bat, right? The way that the West sees this thing is that it's evil, it's satanic. The way that the Hindus see it within the East is that of a banishment of evil. So it almost a sort of power a gesture or gesticulation with the hands. So you're seeing the sort of polarities there, the inversion as well. And so to the boxes, you'll notice that, and you'll see Capricorn frequently appear. Even the sign appears with the tail of the Demiurgos later on, with his image on the screen, shouting at I believe the character's name's Ludovic, the sort of egg or Orphic egg shaped character. But you're only seeing the front end of the goat, the face, the neck, but the back, you're not seeing that. So it's implied that it's the Capricornian sea goat, perhaps, right? And of course, with the Capricornian sea goat, that is the end of the cycle of renewal, redemption, even transcendence to a way, right? Because of course, it's a chimera. The goat can climb the fatal slopes to heaven, and of course, the fish or the sea goat can exist within the abyss at the same time. So he's of both worlds, of both heaven and earth. He's a sort of God man, if you will, right? But we see that he's within these cages, these cubic cages, right? Of course, a symbol of Saturn, a symbol of the world. And then you see painted on it in the black paint the runic symbol known as Fehu. Fehu literally means cattle. So you're also seeing that juxtaposition with Kabbalah and Judaism. They're utilizing this sort of derogatory term for Gentiles now, goyim. Now, goyim, it actually etymologically doesn't have any relation to cattle. but of course, in the way that it's utilized by some minority sects and extremists within Judaism or Kabbalah, it does carry that connotation. So you see that too. You also see underneath, written in chalk. Now, I mean, we could surgically dissect. I've got like pages and pages and just on this thing alone, but and dissecting the guard and how it creates the omega, the pi, and the lambda, and how that relates into isopsephy and other linguistic relations and acronyms. But anyway, just on the purely superficial, you see that the dog itself is almost like Cerberus, and Cerberus was that mythological creature, the three-headed dog who protected the gates of Hades. So the idea is that man is almost involuting, spiritually involuting when he comes into this world, that this world itself is like the asphodel meadows. He stumbles through it in pure self-reflection, or of course pure mindlessness, as we see of the goat. And that's also as well evoked by the eyes. You'll see the spiraling downwards in the eyes. Of course, yes, it's a symbol of entrancement, but it's also a symbol of perhaps spiritual involution, right? The soul descending from a higher point to a lower point.
Yeah, one thing
Yeah.
implies the other. I mean, if you're hypnotized, of course, your soul is not there in the actual sense, right? I mean, it may be there in the background, but it's not present, actively present. So, and also, I completely agree with what you said. Of course, this is a scene taken from the Imaginarium of the Holocaust, with the barbed wire, with the boxes, with the smoke in the chimneys in the background, of course. I don't actually think that, and I know that this is the easy interpretation, but I don't actually think that the goat represents Goyim or anything like that. I think it actually represents the Jews, be it those that participate or those that are just passively in the religion, let's say in the ideology or religion, whatever way you want to see it. This includes in America, because of course this is very America-centric, this film. This represents basically almost all of the, let's put it like, quote unquote, MSM or normie population, be them Jews or not, because Jews, by the necessity of their ideology or religion, will have a worldview. But nowadays, American Christians, evangelical in particular, which take up a lot of people, are in the same category, basically, right? So they I mean, there's Trump has been called the Messiah and the bringer of the new temple and so on and so forth. And
well, that actually may be true if we compare it to the Messiah that's seen within this, because both are orange. Both are very orange.
Right, exactly. exactly. And so I think that this is, the goat is not in particular Goyim. I think it is a class, let's say, a fabricated class of people that are entranced, which will be the scapegoat. But you have to understand, when I say Jews, I'm not talking about blood. I am talking about a mentality, an ideology. And so, an evangelical Christian that is Zionist or etc. would be included in that, right?
Yeah.
Even someone who claims to be atheistic, but who is aligned with, the narrative per se, is included in that. So I think that the pet goats, let's say, represented here, that will be the scapegoats, are those that completely buy into the narrative, and they will find themselves without a ground to step on, once the narrative is removed, once everything like those towers crumble and everything, is basically reset with the awakening of the new Christ, which again, my postulation is that it will be made to, it's theatrical, it will be theatrically made to be an AI agent of some sort, like a super AI, whatever it's sold, that has amassed all the knowledge in the world and now can regulate society to a just and fair and peaceful and etc. All those things, buzzwords. And the pet goats, let's say, will be the ones sacrificed with that, because they are reliant. Those mind characters are entirely reliant on the narrative, on the belief, absolute belief, on the factual existence of that narrative, be it historical records in the far past, be it historical records in the near past, right? So, I just wanted to emphasize that, because all of them had been branded. Sure, some, I just postulated that the barcode could be circumcision, but it's not necessarily just circumcision. Anything can be branded in a likewise manner, even if it's a psychological branding through a set of beliefs, So I think that those pet goats right now will be living their own version of a Holocaust scenario. And for example, when you hear about the white genocide, right? White genocide is basically a Holocaust scenario, right? Done in a different way, etc. But it's basically a Holocaust scenario. You hear about the depopulation in general, and even all sections of the American public have one such version. The blacks have one, the Asians have another. Even the Muslims, who were put in a interesting position, let's say, will have their own version of the hatred against them, and so on and so forth. And so I think that the pet goats are the hypnotized, branded, hypnotized narrative believers, worldview believers. And once that worldview, like I've stated in my book, once that worldview is replaced with another, those people have to be left behind in that sense, in the psychological sense. They will go through trauma, very difficult times, because the very psychological ground that they stepped on to walk in life disappeared, and they can't, it's not something that they are prepared to immediately adapt, most of them at least, to immediately adapt to a new ground. Of course, this would imply that it would be an absolute given that the new narrative would succeed, which I don't think it is an absolute given. But for sure, they have all the tools and weapons at their disposal to make it happen in a more or less peaceful way, comparatively to what would be perhaps if they were to try organically to do the same. So yeah, I think that this goat represents the hypnotized in general, which will be scapegoated, and they will be be it from a racial level, be it from an ideological level, seen as the source of all evils. And even in experiments in the near past that you've seen about, for example, communist countries, etc., those that held religious beliefs when there was a communist revolution would be seen as the source of all evil, right? And likewise in the inversion. So the communists, the atheists, would be seen as the source of all evil if the present narrative, let's say, would be religious theocentric, right, in that regard. So these are the the ones that are in their own box mentally, but those boxes are going to disappear. Those barbed wires are going to disappear. Everything is going to disappear, and they won't be able to handle the new version of their cells, I think.
Yes, and also as well, you see the bell, or sort of wrapped around the neck, right? So
Mhm.
the neck is where, of course, the voice comes from. The voice is the thought. So the idea is that the thought is being constrained by that which almost controls the thought, vis-a-vis making everyone else aware of one's movement, right? Hence the sort of functionality or the utility, the telos, the purpose of the bell. So it's similar, like what you see of eschatologies. People that believe in eschatological frameworks or religions, even just ideologies in general, they are a snare unto themselves, because you know exactly how they're going to react in situations. They
Yep.
become, again, like the barn animal, the goat. And this is why we see a lot of the sort of barn animal like terminology. So, for example, in social media, you see the social media feed or the news feed. So, feed is
Hmm.
something you give in the trough to
Yeah.
to the barn animals. You have herd mentality, herd immunity, all of these things. This is the language of power. In a way, it's almost to induce amnesia, a loss of memory. So this is what we see here with the idea of spiritual involution as well, and the entrancement. So a loss of memory is a loss of the ego. So one does not have any agency or control, or the agency is buried. And then you have a abulia, which is a loss of the will. And then finally, you have apathy, which is a loss of the care of one's own survival. So all of these things are really typified by the goat itself. Something
Mhm.
else just to mention regarding what you were stating, I think this is another level to it, and I don't want to take it too much further because we'd be here forever. But
Mhm.
you have the various blocks. So there's 11 blocks, right? And then you of course have the two at the end scratched in, the numerals. So you'll find that 9 of those blocks have letters or some sort of punctuation mark, and there's another 2 that do not, right? So you have this demarcation, and you'll find this constantly throughout this iPet Goat 2 short film, of the 9 and 11, right? So there's
Mhm.
11 blocks, you take out 2, or you demarcate 2, vis-a-vis the grey, you have, of course, 9 left. So this 911 is constantly there. But the I, so that it starts with the I, which is the ego,
Mhm.
that is hits the comma. The comma literally means to cut, from, I believe it's Latin. So the ego is cut, and then from there you have the pet goat. Now, what is that? What does that relate to? Well,
Mhm.
it can mean several things. Firstly, in Sanskrit, you have petika. So petika literally means the box, and then you have the goat. So the idea would be that through the sort of cutting of the ego, or the cutting off of the ego from its own agency vis-a-vis ideology or eschatology, or what have you, these belief systems, you become literally the beast within the box.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
or, of course, if you look into Hebrew, and this sort of ties in with the deconstruction, the descent into Negredo that we see throughout this film, you see could also be petach gat. So petach is like a doorway, or like an opening, right? Maybe not a doorway, more like an opening. And gat is that of an ancient wine press. And this is something you find throughout Revelation, funnily enough. But so petach gat, by cutting one's ego off through ideology and eschatology, and becoming mindless, becoming the literal Azazel, the sacrificial element within the sort of zoetrope, if you will, or within the circus, um, you literally begin you enter the opening of the wine press, and the wine press is this idea of ritualistic periodic dissolution, or similar to what the Stoics called ekpyrosis, which is a periodic conflagration of the world, right? A renewal through fire. And then, of course, just lastly, the two itself is in its binary form is essentially, if 10 is the number of completion, and this is why I think they had 9/11, because it skips over the number of completion. The idea is that you'll never complete this theater. It just continues. Like what I'm saying, the phonograph will contract and reverse back to its starting position, and the sort of dream will be, rendered anew. And it also, of course, links to the duality, the polarity, the twin towers, and it links to Yama as well. Yama in Sanskrit means twin. Yama was this deity who controlled the wheel of samsara. And funnily enough, that sort of ties in with, you'll see the 6 artificial suns at the top. So there's no sun that gets through. They've sort of, if you will, dimmed everything through a spraying of the fog, if you will.
Yeah.
So therefore they are this is a totally controlled environment, and the 6 relates to the 6 faces of the cube. So the material world, total materialism.
Well, that's very astute, and I agree entirely. Very astute to see that the I comma is a representation also of the separation of the ego from the lower mind character, and therefore making the mind character into a pet goat of the external, right? Of the external worldview. Therefore, it lives in a box and inside a compound surrounded by barbed wire and so on. Another thing that I would add about the Roman numeral 2, in the end, is that it's also the symbol for Gemini. And Trump is Gemini, and there's also the character Trump is Gemini, and there's also a planet, one of the farther planets. It's either Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto, that will go into Gemini for a long time. Now, I'm not sure. It's what? Sorry? It's Uranus. I was telling me it's Uranus is going to Gemini. So, and Gemini, a transit of Uranus lasts for a long time. And Uranus usually is represented by the change, right? The unexpected change. So that could also be a link saying that, the pet goats are going through a change in Gemini. Gemini is linked with communication with IT, once again, the AI god, right? So yeah, that's very astute. I hadn't thought of that, and I agree with that interpretation.
That is really interesting, the connection with Gemini, because there's another scene we'll get on to with the women. So the old woman, and basically it's the phallic tower. And interestingly, Orion, so I believe it's Orion's right hand is raised, where his left hand is not, in the typical art of it. But of course, that point, the right hand itself, you can actually follow the stars up through the make up that right hand of Orion, and it goes to Castor and Pollux, or of course the Gemini twins. One, of course, linking to the twin essence of humanity itself as well, in a more mythological sense, because I believe it was Castor was the great mortal warrior, but pardon me, it was Pollux. It was the great mortal warrior, and Castor was the sort of demigod born of Zeus, and of course his mother was mortal. Zeus liked to get about a bit, as you can tell. There was a lot of demigods at the time that claimed parentage partially with Zeus. So so he loved his brother so much that when his mortal brother fell in battle, he beseeched Zeus so that he could follow his brother into Hades, into death, and to relinquish his immortality, which of course relates to the fallen star or the fallen state of man. Interestingly, as well, just really quickly, I don't want to bore you guys, but you'll see the dog is shouting "woof," or is exclaiming "woof," and you can see that sort of cartoonish thing, right? Woof itself, I only sort of came across this. I mean, this is what I'm saying, that this thing is literally teeming with symbols. I can't believe that they managed to put all of them in. But you'll see that if you trace woof back, etymologically, it actually means to weave or to braid. It comes from an Old English or Middle English term, ovwith, which means to weave or to braid. This relates to the Norns, to fate, to time itself, and to, of course, the idea of the fabric of reality. So everything is created vis-a-vis this sort of rhizomatic entanglement of the threads of interconnected destiny. And you also see as well the Simsum power on, power off sign. That is the idea of the birth pangs of contraction, and of course the head of the goat comes out of the darkness of the womb into the light. The sort of fiat lux, let there be light, that idea. And there, of course, there's 3 planks as well, because we're established. You'll see this 3 pop up everywhere. Remember as well, we went to Sintra, and literally the 3 was it was everywhere. This, of course, it relates to the Trinity, but the Trinity itself, going further back, relates to this idea of the trimorphic protonoia, which is the 3 forms, the threefold first thought. And so the idea is that it begins with consciousness, then will, and then goes to that of the demarcation vis-a-vis the ego. So I am me, I'm not you, that idea. So you see that there too. So pretty much it's everything's there. Even the columns themselves look like pillars, look like the pillars of the spine and the vertebra. That's something else that's also present there.
Well, also the dog that's barking there in the drawing is being held on a leash by someone with a cap. Now, we don't know what that cap represents. It could be a policeman, it could be a MAGA hat, it could be whatever. But the person is holding a gun. So probably it's about to shoot the dog that barks. If the dog didn't bark, he would behave well. It would be fine. But the dog that barks will be metaphorically shot. No, I don't think that there will be actual killings, but it's a representation, a drawing representing a metaphorical psychological thing, that the one holding the leash has a gun, and so you better not bark like that dog. That's another layer that we could see. But you can perhaps move on to the next scene so that we can make use of our time.
So I'll put it on one. So is there? Do you want to? We'll do this one, or do you want to just head to the classroom scene, the more famous
well,
one?
Here it's important because you have the economics symbol with the dollar sign on one hand, and the other one seems like a bloody heart. So it's the emotional, let's say. One of the things that seems obvious to me is that the way that all worldviews, all religions have managed to establish themselves as worldviews, as accepted by the masses, has been through these 2 vehicles. On the one hand, the cold economics. So it is the self-interest at work. It's better if I align myself with the group because I will reap benefits, cold benefits from it, let's say, numeric benefits from it. I will, gain better income or whatever it is, get better jobs, that kind of thing. And the other one is through the emotion, the bloody emotion. It could also, be seen as, the state of fear, the state of terror of either death or something worse, right? So usually you would have a god is to be feared. Of course, it is used as, no, you have to love God and God loves you. But in fact, what is going on there is a fear of that deity, whatever it is, be it even the state, right? I don't think that even if people pretend they don't love the state or the president or whatever, they fear them, right? They fear them because they perceive them to have a power that goes beyond their reach, right? And that is an emotional response. Therefore, the bloody heart, on the other hand, so these two hands manipulate the worldview, manipulate the narrative for basically world domination on the psychological level, but to maintain, of course, a better position for the script writers, whoever they may be.
Well, I think you're absolutely spot on. And another thing to mention is that, so the dollar sign on the one hand is also the staff of Asclepius, and as we'll see at the end, within the clouds, you have Scorpio and the hand of Ophiuchus, or the hand of the alchemist or magician, however we want to term it. Asclepius, I do believe in mythology, became Ophiuchus. He was catastrophized, or sort of entrapped or locked into the heavens by Zeus. I forget why now. But another thing is that it relates to the notion of the snake. Within Hebrew, is the Nachash. Now, Nachash also can mean the shining one. So you have the idea within Greek and Gnosticism of the phanes protogenos, which is the shining firstborn. So similar, of course, to that of Prometheus, Lucifer. Not exactly the same, but there's sort of interconnections. It's the idea that that's of the Geist almost, that it's this sort of invasiveness that tethers itself to the soul, which is of the cold intellect, rather than of the sort of pure passion, the spirituality, the living in accordance and equilibrium with that of nature as well. You also see that of the dollar too. I also saw that as a frog, somewhat. So the red frog, and this idea, you see within Kabbalah is the Zaphardia, and the Zaphardia is also, so it's related to, of course, the second plague in Egypt, which is that of the frogs, but it's also related to what's called Mesogot Nefesh, which is self-sacrifice. So it's almost like you have the two pillars, the two hands that control life, control the marionettes, the puppets below, which is that it controls even the politicians, everything, all of the hierarchy, which is that of self-sacrifice, or the self-sacrificing through the chasing of the shining or glittering of the dollar, or even of the secrets. That's also something the staff of Asclepius can indicate, secrets. So it's through this sort of exoteric and esoteric pursuit of either truth or wealth or power that basically bleeds people dry. The frog is also in the Egyptian pantheon related to fertility and renewal, and also the flooding of the Nile. So again, that was related to fecundity and the fecundity of the land and things like that. So you're seeing all of this, right? This sort of unthinking self-sacrifice, and that is produced vis-a-vis the dollar, or vis-a-vis, of course, the eschatology, any ideology, or even the pursuit of knowledge itself. And knowledge is this idea that man can firmly know, without any shadow of a doubt, a thing to be certain, which of course leads man to do some really, really abhorrent things. Because if you believe you have truth and the other people are believing in lies, it doesn't take too much of a leap, as we see, for example, in Kabbalah, or really in any Abrahamic theology, or of course any religion known to man, that you believe that if they are affirming and subscribing to lies, that they are somehow spiritually entrapped, and thus, you have to sort of free them from that spiritual entrapment. You have to save their soul.
Become a
So,
missionary. Yeah.
or become a holy warrior as well.
Yes.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
it leads to all manner of evilness.
Yeah,
Knowledge does.
these are, in fact, you are correct. Two pillars. One is cold, one is hot. Of course, the bleeding one is the hot one, and the dollar one is the cold one. Because, of course, economics is cold. It doesn't care about your emotions. While the other hand is all about emotions, right? It's all about causing emotional response, emotional triggering, emotional action, even. So a reaction, per se, to something that is on the narrative screen. And so these two work together because, again, like I said, one will give you a cold result to your actions, while the other one gives you this hot or at least warm response to your actions, which could be an approval or a disapproval, which has, of course, consequences as well. So, yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I didn't know about that frog thing. I honestly don't see a frog, but I go with you on that. I allow that one.
It may be actually maybe a heart as well. I've always seen a frog for some particular reason. I don't know.
It's
why.
that Rorschach test or whatever it's called.
That's the
Those
one.
blots.
Yes.
Those blots. You see whatever you.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe I need to see the GP. My heart shaped like a frog or something. I don't know. Or I'm seeing all the hearts like frogs. Yeah, man. That's a really astute point as well. And the idea that you see also, you see the way his fingers are separated, right? So you brought up the water and fire. This is something you see even in the Zohar. The idea that the world ages of man and the water and the cosmos, the cosmic psychodrama, they are broken up. Broken up by two resets. One is a temporary reset, that of the baptism vis-a-vis fire, baptism vis-a-vis water, pardon, the deluge, and that of the terminus, which is the baptism via fire. So you're absolutely spot on. If the snake represents the cold descent of the divine sparks and the sort of crystallization of it, the into ice, the crystallization of the water of the mother into the ice of the sort of hyper patriarchal system, if you will, not using that in a sort of feminist sense, just in terms of the energies, then the into these sort of dark shells, the Kelly path of this matrix, if you will, within the illusion of duality and the geistological intellect, then the frog would represent that mechanism of return, right, where basically the blood is flowing once more. And the idea in the Zohar is that blood is the coagulation of light, which is interesting because this ties in with Gnosticism. There's one, I think it's the Setian Gnostics. I may be incorrect there. Don't quote me. But in their creation myth, the idea is that Yaldabaoth created a world of living, of clay, of inanimate clay, a sort of vessel ready for that of the sort of substance of light. But he could not create that substance of light. So therefore, he either trapped Sophia or he trapped an angel of light. Both are effectively synonymous. So therefore, the blood that runs through our veins, that which in fact gives us life and animation artificially within our biological vessels, if you will, then that itself would be the coagulation of light, and thus to let the blood flow. Yes, it's to sacrifice that light, but it's to stop the stagnancy of the light, the death of the light, to keep the light flowing, because the light is potential. And if the potential is not brought into that, again, that discharge of self-sacrifice, or, get basically shaking up the sort of stagnancy within the pool,
Yeah.
Everything will die. Everything will turn into, effectively a tangled mess. So this also ties in with what we've been seeing with, for example, do you remember the ice protests? Right,
Yeah.
the
Mhm.
ice protests turned very, very fiery. So you had
Mhm.
fire, the Song of Fire and Ice, right? Or of course, you had it with Game of Thrones as well, right? A
Yes, you had
song of ice and fire.
the emotional response and reactions to everything that happened. In the narrative itself, the reactions of the officers were emotional. The
Mhm.
reactions of the protesters were emotional, and the reactions of those witnessing that was emotional as well, right? So um, this is why I say emotion is the target of all of this, all of these stories, let's say narratives, world stage narratives. The idea is to grab you by the emotion. And I think that, of course, at a higher level, emotion is linked exactly with that light, let's call it, the life, right? Someone who does not have emotions, particularly at an elevated level, like I was saying, is not alive, right? It's not alive as a man or as a woman, right? So they play upon that. They play upon, because even there's that, idea of, oh, this terrible thing happened. You're not crying, right? You must be a psychopath, or you must be, right? And there are several reasons why you may not cry. One of them is, well, I know this is bullshit. But uh, there's that forced, triggered response, emotional response, and that comes from the blood, which is why in the old um, types, personality types, there was the sanguine, right? Sanguine means
Mm.
the bloody was the one that was very emotional, right? Very emotionally charged, for good or bad, right? For the pleasant or the unpleasant. So all of that, I think that everything that is presented follows that, and they have to change from time to time, because I think that organically, that very life or light, if you want to compare it to that, will promote change.
Mhm.
And if they don't change alongside it, if they don't change alongside the organic prompts, they lose the grip, right? The story loses importance, right? And so it has to follow. That's why I've been doing, well, one of the reasons, not only, but one of the reasons I've been doing that series with Noble Intent about astrology is because I've come to observe that, yes, every twist and turn of the world stage narratives, of the world stage fake narrative, I repeat again, follows prompts together in astrology,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And that is not, in my opinion, that is not because they are using the power, let's say, of the stars for their own ends. That is because the stars are a clock face, and it represents this is a good time, an organic time for each individual to check these things out, whatever they are, in
Mhm.
their personal psyche, right? But if you have a theater going on, and if you follow that same clock, that same timing, right, you can direct the attention away from the internal psyche onto an external movie, basically, right? And so people can get, oh, I'm aggravated at the shooting of this school, or the ICE protesters, or the war in Iran, or the whatever, right? I'm aggravated at that. I look at that external theater instead of using that same time to look at my wars, my psychological
Yes.
wars, my psychological protests, let's say, my psychological policing and police state, even inside of one's own psyche and that kind of thing. So yeah, absolutely. I think that they follow and they do perform the changes because the timing, they follow the timings, the organic timings for it, which come from that very life. Yeah.
Absolutely. And just something really quickly to mention as well, because I'll have to go in a minute, man. But
Uh-huh.
you see this Tav shape, the X shape as well, and that itself is basically and you'll see the pin right at the conjoining these two axes of that sort of puppeteer's control, and so that itself is effectively the world tarot card, and it's the four royal stars, and the Tav itself is this idea that it's the ending, right? It's the destruction. It's almost the sort of abyssal theater that periodically sort of not necessarily sublimates, but renews itself. And so you see the hands. So firstly, you have the separation of the fingers, which is that of the fire and air, which are the masculine principles, and of course of the first hay and the second hay of Yod He Vaya. That's also the alchemical elements, but the water and earth. So you see the same thing on the Baphomet's hands too. Funnily enough, so you see this 2 and 2. This 4, that's also the reason for the love heart, by the way. If you take the 22, take the front two and turn it around, put them together, of course you get a heart shape. So you get this sort of a conjoining of the hemispheres, or of the polarities, the polarity of energy. But you'll notice where it's placed, and this we'll get into this because this is a sort of recurring symbol throughout IPEC Goat 2, and also as well as featured prominently in the classroom, is that where if you can think of the world tarot card, the demiurge's, I'll just use that term, the demiurge's right hand, so that would be on our left, is at Fomalhaut, which is in Pisces Austrinus, or the Southern Fish. That also represents the man of Aquarius, and that of the sort of south easterly descent into Leo or Regulus, which is his left hand on our right, is placed. You also see that as well with the breaking of the two hemispheres of the brain vis-a-vis the lightning bolt cracking it in twain. And the pins that hold up that picture are also in the same format, juxtaposed, of course, to the pins that are in the opposite format from Aldebaran to Scorpio, this sort of golden gate ascent of the that holds up the owl picture. So the idea is that we are in a descent here, and this of course follows what we'll see later on with the descent of the camera down the threads that control man, and of course there's 5 of those threads. And of course, in the shape of that X, with the middle thread, the spirit, the pneuma, being in the point which conjoins the masculine and the feminine, which conjoins the 4 elements together.
Right.
So yeah.
Okay, man. So do we have time to move to the next scene, or maybe we'll cut it for the next?
Yeah. We'll cut it here and then we'll jump in. We're 23 seconds through it and we've already done an hour episode. So this, when I say this is jam packed, it really is quite jam. This will be another tarot series, definitely.
Well, it's not a problem. We'll do it as it comes, so that's fine. Well, okay. I hope you enjoyed this first 23 seconds of the of the 7-minute movie. We'll be here long past the reset point. So if there's still internet after that, which there will be, I'm just kidding. In 1,000 years, the archaeologists will find this, and we're still doing the episodes. Anyway, man, you have a good one then, and let me know, and we'll proceed. Just remember, we're in what, 23 minutes?
23
23
seconds.
seconds, I mean.
Precisely.
Yeah.
I'll remember that because of that Jim Carrey movie. So,
Yes. Yeah. Now you'll see 23 everywhere.
23, yeah, I'll be writing it on my face and everything.
Yeah.
Right, man. Take it easy.
Okay, man. See ya. Thank you.